right-hand side of the truck, you're also going to see a dark brown and also striped hind legs. That is the okapi. Because of the okapi stripes, a lot of people think that it's a relative to the zebra. But actually, the okapi is the only known relative to the giraffe. Now, like the giraffe, it has a really long prehensile tongue, so long that it can lick its own eyeballs. And it being prehensile, that means that it can use its tongue to grab things, like leaves out of trees. Now that is a female okapi, and you can tell because she does not have any ossicones on her head. Ossicones are basically just skin-covered nubs that rest on the top of their heads. It's actually another thing they share with their cousin the giraffe. However, both male and female giraffe will grow them, while only the male okapi will. Now there's also what's probably an animal watering hole here to the left, and those are usually some really great places to spot an animal or two. So we'll keep our eyes open. Now walking towards us, there is a black rhino there on your left-hand side. The black rhino is a smaller subspecies of rhino. It can reach a weight of 3,000 pounds and run at a speed of 35 miles per hour. There is a second black rhino, also hanging out on the top of this ledge here on the left-hand side. And unfortunately, there are only about 5,000 black rhino left on the entire planet, and that is due to poaching. Now, he's kind of hard to spot. He's kind of behind the rocks there. But on the right-hand side, there is a bongo walking past us there, and then there's going to be a few more up ahead here as well. And the bongo are also known as the ghosts of the forest because they're hardly ever seen. So if you can spot a bongo, which you should be able to, they're right there. Now you can say you saw ghosts while you're on Kilimanjaro safaris. Now the tan deer-like animal hanging out with the bongo, that is one of the greater kudu. And the greater kudu that we're seeing are definitely female kudu. You can tell because they don't have any horns on their heads. Only the male of the greater kudu will grow any horns. The horns that were on the top of the bongo's head, you may have noticed they're very curvy and a little bit flatter on their head. That does help them run through the bushes and the shrubbery of the forest a little bit faster. But now we are leaving the little Aturi forest. And from what I can tell, it looks like we are approaching Sophie River. Now, Sophie River is a pretty large body of water, so sometimes there are some pretty large animals that can be found here. We'll keep our eyes open. Now, some of you might catch a little sneak peek of a hippo in the right-hand corner there. Not a great place to stop and see a hippo. We'll see if we can spot some more further down the river here, but that is one of the Nile hippopotamus. And the Nile hippo, they do like to hang out in the water during the daytime as it helps keep them cool. So they rise in the water at night and feast on the grass along the water's edge. Now, they can hold their breath for up to 8 minutes, and although they are excellent swimmers, they don't like to swim. They usually prefer to just sink to the bottom of the water and then simply walk or run on the water's bottom. There's a whole bloat of them on the river, it looks like, here to your left, and that's what a group of hippos is known as, a bloat of hippos. Now, those hippos are also hanging out with some birds that are on that island there to your left, and those birds there are the pink-backed pelican. Now, the pink-backed pelican get their name from the fact that their backs will turn pink, or at least more pink than normal during mating season. And they are a very ancient bird. Their fossils have been found to date back to more than 40 million years ago. Now, later tonight after the sun sets, any hippos that can be found in the river are going to become more and more vocal. And a hippo vocalization is known as a wheeze honk. Now, hippo wheeze honks are about as unique as your and I's voices. Some hippos will wheeze before they honk, some will honk before they wheeze, and some hippos, they just honk. But it looks like there's another very dangerous animal on the river. Down there on your left-hand side, you are going to see the Nile Crocodile. Now, the Nile Crocodile, like I said, are very dangerous. They have very powerful jaws, but they don't just use those jaws of theirs for catching prey. It also makes them excellent parents. They've been seen rattling their eggs around in their mouths to encourage the little ones to hatch. But now we're heading away from Sophie River. And from what I can tell, it looks like we are heading towards the African savanna. Now, the African savanna does stretch for hundreds and hundreds of miles. So it's probably where we're going to spend the majority of our safari. is home to some of the world's largest and most famous animals. Now, before we get to see any of those animals, we are going to see a baobab tree here to the right, also known as the upside down tree because its branches look like roots about 9 months out of the year. Now, for a baobab tree to be the size of the one that we just saw, it does have to be around 2,000 years old. And now we have officially entered the African savanna. Now you can definitely tell that there have been some post-stock animals that have passed through the savanna recently, just from how short a lot of the grass is. Normally the grass in the savanna is a little bit more overgrown than this, but as those animals pass through and graze on the grass and it's up nice and short, just like this, we'll keep an eye out for any herds of post-stock grazing animals that we might be able to spot. Now there is an animal den here to our left. We will try and see if anyone's home. We'll get a better view once we get past this big boulder right here. Doesn't look like anything's home at the moment. Now we are also going to see the signature animals of the reserve though, here to your left, and that's the Sable Antelope, one of the only antelope species that will actually fight back against predators. Now the way that their horns grow kind of arched towards their backs, you might notice that does deter lions from jumping on top of them while hunting. Now the dark gray animals that are on both sides of the truck, these are the white-bearded wildebeest. And the wildebeest make one of the largest land migrations on the planet, with up to 1.5 million of them that have been seen migrating together at one time. Now to the left, the large cows with the very large horns on their heads, those are the Ancholy cattle, also known as the Watusi cattle, one of the only domesticated animals we'll spot on the reserve today. The large horns on their heads are hollow, so they're not that heavy, only about 5 to 10 pounds. And they're comprised of a honeycomb structure that circulates blood to the top of their heads. And that's how they stay cool in the savanna heat. It also looks like we're going to see one of the Maasai giraffe coming up here on the left-hand side. Now, any giraffe that we see today are going to be Maasai giraffe. And what separates Maasai giraffe from other subspecies is their messier and darker colored spots that are on their coats. I doubt that this giraffe is all by itself on the savanna. It's probably a part of a larger tower of giraffe. And that is what a group of giraffe is known as, a tower. So we'll see if we can spot the rest of its tower as we head deeper into the savanna here. Now, giraffe are the tallest land mammals on the planet. Some of the taller subspecies can reach a height of over 20 feet tall. And whenever a baby giraffe is born, it is born at 6 feet tall. It can stand up just 1 hour after being born. You'll probably notice the giraffe has a pretty long neck. But it might surprise you to learn that they do have the same amount of neck vertebrae that we do, which is just 7 vertebrae. Theirs is just larger and spaced out further than ours. And giraffes don't just have large necks, they also have very large hearts. And I mean that, both figuratively and literally. A giraffe heart is about 2 feet long, and it weighs about 25 pounds. Because their hearts are so large, they actually do have the highest blood pressure out of all the animals in the animal kingdom. And it looks like he might cross the road in front of us. And a giraffe's favorite thing to do throughout the day is to eat. Giraffe will actually spend about 16 to 20 hours of their day just eating. That does not leave a lot of time for much else. So the giraffe will only spend about 30 minutes a day sleeping. When they do sleep, they only sleep for a few minutes at a time, so they basically just take little naps throughout the day, and they prefer to sleep standing up with their eyes open. Now it looks like the baby giraffe did probably just now come out onto the savanna. It looks like they're running off some steam right now. There, I just see 2 of them sprinting around in circles out there right now, and it looked like there might have been a giraffe in the road up ahead, which is why we're pausing here for just a moment. We are visiting animals in their home territory, so they are free to do whatever they'd like. And sometimes what they like to do is stand in the road. Whenever that happens, it might create a little bit of what I like to call a giraffic jam out here on the reserve. It looks like we are going to creep closer to some of those baby giraffe and the rest of that tower in just a moment here. Now before we see the rest of those giraffe though, we are going to see some more white-bearded wildebeest as well as these little tiny guys that are in front of us here hanging out with the wildebeest. They're very small and they kind of look like s'mores. They are the Springbok. The Springbok are one of the top 10 fastest land mammals on the planet. They can reach a speed of 60 miles per hour, and they can actually jump 13 feet straight in front of them with a single leap, which is probably one of the reasons why they got the name the Springbok. Now there's those babies. One of them is still kind of running around in circles around the bushes there. Now, you might notice the bumps on the top of the giraffe's head. Now, those bumps on their head are not horns, they're those mossy cones. He's got a lot of energy this morning. But those are those oxycones I mentioned that they share with the male okapi, their cousin. Whenever a baby giraffe is born, like one of those babies, their oxycones are actually soft and flat on their heads. Then as the baby giraffe ages, the cartilage and the ossicones will slowly harden. Eventually it'll turn into bone, and then it fuses into their skulls to become like the ossicones of the adult giraffe. There's another adult giraffe here on the left-hand side of the truck. And you might notice the hair that hangs from the end of a giraffe's tail. Now each strand of hair on a giraffe's tail is about 20 times as thick as the strands of hairs on her head. And they can actually use that tail and the hair on that tail kind of like a whip in order to whip any bugs and insects and any unwanted critters off of their butts and back. Now something that you can sometimes see the giraffe doing on the savannah is something called necking. Necking is basically when two giraffes, they'll kind of fling their heads into each other's necks, kind of like their head is a weapon. It's something that male giraffes sometimes do with one another as a way of asserting dominance over one another. Now, this rock formation up ahead here that we're about to pass through, this is commonly referred to as Monkey Point. And it looks like an elephant may have passed through Monkey Point recently. It may have toppled this tree on the right-hand side over. Elephant love to eat from tall trees, just like giraffe do, but they're not quite as tall as giraffe, so instead they have to just knock the trees over, and then they eat the leaves off the ground. There is an African elephant there on your right-hand side. Whenever you see an elephant, you can tell you're looking at an African elephant by looking at their ears. Their ears are actually shaped like the continent of Africa. You get a good look at them there. On the left-hand side of the truck, we are also going to see the mandrill. That's the largest, most brightly colored monkeys on the planet. The male mandrill, like the large male on the top of the rocks there, can reach a weight of 100 pounds. And they are the monkey species Rafiki from Disney's The Lion King is inspired after. There's one hanging out on the rocks there as well. Rafiki, by the way, is Swahili for monkey. It just means monkey. And if I had to guess, I would guess that that elephant that we just saw kind of behind us there is a male elephant. And the reason that I say that is because it looked like he was all by himself. Once male elephant reaches adulthood, they will leave their herds and go off on their own. However, they sometimes will form bachelor herds. That's just smaller little groups of just the male elephant. Now, speaking of elephant, there was a Disney Conservation Fund researcher who did discover that elephants are deathly afraid of bees. So in an effort to help protect the elephant from African farmers that were killing them to protect their crops, he developed beehive fences that the farmers can place around their crops. Now the elephant will hear the bees buzzing, and they will steer clear. That protects the elephant from the farmers, it protects the farmers' crops from the elephant, and it gives the farmers a free supply of honey. So it's a win-win for everyone. At first, they tried to just put up speakers that played buzzing noises, but elephants are very intelligent creatures, so it did not take them long to figure out that those were fake. They had to actually implement real, what are known as living fences. Now it does look like it's an elephant passed through here at some point recently. One of the ways I can tell are these tusk marks here in the clay, mostly on the right-hand side. Elephants do like to dig their tusks in clay like that elephant there to your left. They like to gather the clay up and then they eat it. Now them eating the clay is kind of like their version of them taking their daily vitamin. The clay is filled with rich minerals and it helps keep the elephant healthy. Now from the elephant we saw a moment ago, you may have noticed the tusks protruding from their face. Now elephant tusks are made of ivory and both male and female elephant will grow those tusks. Unfortunately, that does make both male and female elephant targets of poaching. Now, there are a few elephant we're going to see here on our left-hand side, including the little baby elephant. You're going to see the baby there to your left as well. Now, elephant love to eat, just like the giraffe do, like I said earlier. They eat about 300 pounds of food every single day. And 300 pounds is also about the same amount of weight that a baby elephant weighs the day that it's born, 300 pounds. Now, they don't just eat a lot of food, they do also drink a lot of water, about 50 gallons of water a day. So their watering hole up ahead here is probably a pretty popular hangout spot for them. And they don't just eat a lot of food and drink a lot of water. Elephants also poop a lot of poop, about 100 pounds of poop a day. And elephant poop is actually gathered up and recycled into a lot of different useful things, including insect repellent and even paper. There's actually a website called poopoopaper.com where you can buy paper made out of recycled elephant. Now, there are some birds hanging out in this pond, coming up here on our left-hand side. And these birds here are the greater flamingo. Now, the greater flamingo are the largest and the lightest in color of the flamingo species. They're actually hatched gray, like some of the young gray flamingo you can actually see there. After about a year of them eating their favorite food, which is brine shrimp. The gray flamingo will eventually turn pink. Now, a lot of the gray flamingo here have already begun turning pink. A lot of their legs are turning pink. Some of them are getting some pink wing feathers, and some of the older ones, their beaks are also starting to turn a little pink. And a group of flamingo, like the group that we just saw right there, is known as a flamboyant flamingo. And that's for their flamboyant pink color. Now, there is sort of sunny area we're going to see here to our left, and actually, we are going to see some roasted marshmallows with some horns on their heads here to the left as well, and these are the scimitar horned oryx. One of them's got a little itchy spot on his back. He was just scratching at that horn. Now, the oryx is a desert species of antelope, and because they live in the desert, while we can go about 3 days without any water, they can go up to 9 months without a single drop of water. Little sneak peek of a white rhino there to the right-hand side as well, but we will see them again. As we head deeper into the savannah. Probably we'll see the entire crash of rhino, because I doubt he's by himself. And that's what a group of rhinos know as a crash. Now, the rhino do like to hang around muddy areas like this to your left. They roll around in the mud and coat themselves in it. It's how they stay cool. And it looked like the rhino that we just caught a peek of was coated in that mud right now. And I've heard rumors about an animal that can sometimes be seen in this area, and actually it looks like we are going to get a pretty good view of one. Coming up on the left-hand side, you are going to see the fastest land mammal on the entire planet. That's the cheetah. There's 2 of them walking around right now up ahead here to the left. Now, the cheetah can reach a top speed of over 70 miles per hour. And they can go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in only 3 seconds. Now, a group of them is known as a coalition of cheetahs, and they do have non-retractable claws, so their claws are always out, even when they're running super fast. Now, they're the only big cat species that will hunt during the daytime. And fun fact, technically the cheetah is the only big cat species that can purr. Cheetahs can purr. They're kind of like big house cats, but super dangerous. Now, this rock formation up ahead here, this is known as a kopie. And speaking of big cats, oh, did you hear that? The lion is roaring right now. Looks like there's a female right there. You can kind of just see her little paws. She's laying down. Also, we'll get a better view of them once we get to the other side of this kopie here in just a moment. Now, the lion, they are largely inactive during the day. I mentioned that the giraffes spend up to 20 hours a day eating, while the lions spend up to 20 hours a day sleeping. They're very vocal right now. Now, their daytime vision is about the same as ours. Like I was saying, their daytime vision is about the same as ours, but their nighttime vision is 6 times greater, so they do most of their hunting at night. Of course, they go to the other side, now, on this side. Let's see. Well, you can kind of still see that male lion kind of walking around, kind of behind us there if you look. Kind of behind the truck, you can kind of see them hanging out there. It's no lazy male lion that does the hunting, it is the female lions. The male lion's responsibilities fall on defending their territory and their cubs or their pride from any threats. And they do have the loudest roar, actually, out of all the big cats. A lion roaring as loud as it can be heard up to 5 miles away. Now we're going to see some warthogs hanging out by their burrows here to your left. And these warthogs, they can reach a speed of 35 miles per hour like the rhino can. And when they run, they like to bounce with their tails sticking straight up in the air, just like how Pumbaa would run in Disney's The Lion King. Now we are going to see those white rhino again. They're directly in front of the truck here. And the white rhino are larger than the black rhino we saw earlier. They can reach a speed of 35 miles per hour, just like the black rhino can. But they weigh about 5,000 pounds compared to the black rhino's 3,000. Now the horns in the front of their faces are not made of ivory like elephant tusks are. They're made of keratin. It's the same material our hair and our fingernails are made of. And those eggs on the ground don't belong to the rhino. Rhino do not lay eggs. Those are ostrich eggs, and ostrich eggs are extremely sturdy. An adult human male can stand on top of one of those eggs and it would not crack. One last glimpse of the warthogs there to your left. They do have two different sets of tusks. The most noticeable set are those tusks that curve upwards from their face. Those are the tusks they dug their burrows with. Then they have another set underneath those that stick straight out, and those are the tusks they use for defense. Now, we are leaving the African savanna, and it looks like we're heading into what is known as the Magati Glen. Now, the Magati Glen is where the warden has set up his warden's post here on the edge of the reserve. And that means that we should be able to see the warden's Nigerian dwarf goats. Now, Nigerian dwarf goats are very popular in Africa, both as pets, because they're super duper cute, and as dairy animals. They produce a really sweet, really high protein milk. Now, the goats stand at about 2 feet tall, and they have little pot bellies that hold their 4 stomachs that they have to help them digest a lot of the food that they eat. That yellow triangular box in front of the goats, that is actually an example of a piece of one of those beehive fences that we mentioned earlier. So that's what that beehive kind of looks like there. And those goats are a really great example of how humans and animals can live together in harmony with one another, with a symbiotic relationship. The people of Africa take care of the goats, providing food, shelter, and water, and in return, the goats provide companionship, the milk that they produce, and they help keep the grass of the land nice and short. But sadly, my friends,